I understand what you mean.
Well, how was the whai kōrero translated to you from the first whai kōrero?
Oh, I just had a running commentary and a running translation of all the speakers.
What did they how did they translate that first kōrero to you?
Well, I can't remember the specifics of what, but I mean, I enjoyed the whole conversation. There were some challenges and some provocation.
He was angry. He said you were taking us to a dark place and that you were a three-headed taniwha. So why was that translation not given to you as it was? That's
how I understood the conversation. I had a translator through the Te Reo speakers, and that was exactly what was translated to me.
Prime Minister, there were a lot of challenges put to you today.
Correct.
On the Aotea there. What did you make of it?
Well, look, I think that's I've subsequently just come out of a conversation with Kingi Tuheitia and also with the team here, and we've done a debrief on what happened at the Hui over the weekend. It's all there is a range of views and there is a range of feeling, and that's important that that's expressed and people are free to express it. That's why I came here.
Did you expect it to get that fiery?
Well, I expect people to actually express what they're saying and what they feel, and they're entitled to do that, and that's part of the process of actually being part of the process, being able to actually hear that and hear where people are at.
Labour has called you the enemy.
Well, no disrespect. Māori under Labour for the previous 6 years went backwards big time, and so they had their chance, and they didn't take Māori forward at all. Well, what I mean by that is when I look at health outcomes, when I look at education outcomes, when I look at housing outcomes, when I look at economic outcomes, those are the opportunities that you have in government to make sure that you actually improve outcomes for Māori. That's what I've spent my time talking about today after our conversations, and that's what we'll continue to do across the country.
Is there a scenario in which National will support it after the selection process?
Well, what I can say to you is that we have been really clear as a coalition government. We came together. I appreciate that ACT want to take a bill to referendum. We don't support that as a national party. As a national party, we have no intention and no commitment to take it beyond the first reading.
Not your intention. Can you just rule out supporting it any further than a selection?
Well, what I've got is a coalition agreement that says that there is no commitment to support it beyond a first reading from all three parties that are involved in the government. And what you know, our long-standing National Party position, which we articulated incredibly well over the last year, it's not something that we support. We think it's divisive and unhelpful. But what we have, and as a result, we don't have no intention, no commitment to take it beyond that.
Shane Jones has said that they're not going to support it after the first reading. Does that mean essentially the bill is dead in the water?
Well, it's consistent with our coalition agreements. We have said, I don't know how to be any clearer about it, there is no commitment to support it beyond a first reading from all three parties signed up for that.
Well, I guess let me rephrase a little bit.
Sorry, Tova.
That's as far as it will go. So
Correct.
Is that it? Definitely won't go
Again, no intention, no commitment to take it beyond first reading. I don't know how to be any clearer. It's in the coalition agreement.
It's really divisive.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because we live in an MMP environment. We formed a coalition government. The ACT Party want a full referendum. It's what they took to the election. It's what they what is important to them and their supporters. The National Party had a different view about it. Doesn't support it.
Failure to negotiate on your part?
No, it's the reality of a coalition agreement where you actually have to come together, and our system forces parties that are not all the same, that are not exactly the same. It would be exactly the same if you saw a Labour Te Pāti Māori Greens conversation take place. There will be compromises involved there. We made compromises. ACT made a compromise. National made a compromise. We have a coalition government, and that coalition government says that there's a commitment not to take it further beyond a first reading.
The main way to be clearer about this, which I think is reflected through a lot of the kōrero from today, would be to say that National will not take it any further, will not support it any further. At Te Ranga Waiwai, this bill was among the main ones, talked about, and
well, there was 5
concern
breakout
raised about
sessions.
that. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the clear way to do it is to say we will not support it post-end. So will you use
Well,
that
I've been very
language?
clear.
Will
There
you
is no
use that language
intention
before it gets to select committee. I suppose
Well,
that's the answer.
well, there is no
to this question.
intention, no commitment to take it beyond first reading. That is a commitment of our coalition government. The position of the National Party is incredibly well known. No intention, no commitment to take it beyond a first reading. It's not something that we support. We've made a compromise with both ACT and National and New Zealand First, and as a result, we're in the position where we are, where there's no commitment beyond a first reading. Sorry.
On the deployment announcement yesterday, the Hurtu-run government is giving US and UK citizens 30 days to leave Yemen. Will this change anything about the deployment?
Again, we'll take advice from Foreign Affairs around that.
The speakers today
Sorry.
remain concerned around these discussions around the treaty. In your discussions with them after the speeches, do you think they've finally understood that you don't have a commitment
Oh, that's been well understood through this. What we've been talking about is actually what we've been talking about a lot, and what a lot of our conversation has been in the series of meetings that I had with iwi leaders up and down the country, is actually more importantly, what are we doing about 2/3 of Māori kids not at school regularly at the moment? What are we doing actually about making sure that we actually have our kids set up to go and to be able to get well educated to do well? Those are the conversations, and how can we work together to make that come to pass? How do we improve those outcomes? That's what our conversation's been about a lot with iwi leaders across the country.
Shane Jones has just told us that that you're proposing to review the performance of the Waitangi Tribunal, looking to legislate principles which the tribunal could implement. Isn't that the treaty principles bill under another name?
No, all we're saying is that as we come to the end of treaty settlements, there's actually a legitimate question, which others have asked in the past, whether it be Chris Finlayson or others, that there's actually a question about what the future role of the Waitangi Tribunal should be and how it could be repurposed and what the focus of it should be. That's a legitimately reasonable question that any government of any colour would be thinking about in the context of post-treaty settlements.
Was there
You
anything?
said you would work with Māori, but you gave no strategy, no plan in your kōrero today on how you're going to achieve that.
Well, we've been talking to iwi up and down the country for some time. If I think about last week, we sat down with all the governance and all the senior executive team at Ngāi Tahu. We talked a lot about the areas of interest to them, the areas of interest to us as a government, and where we might potentially collaborate. That conversation's been happening behind closed doors for the last year with different iwi about how we can actually take the country forward.
Was there anything that was there
Sorry,
anything that was,
sorry, mate, Felix.
Even arguing the Houthi conflict is not linked to the war in Gaza?
Well, I want to be clear, I think conflating the two issues is completely, utterly wrong. What the Houthi are doing is actually indiscriminate attacks on civilian ships. That's been, I think, on over, I think there's been 31 attacks, over 60 nations impacted, and as a result, we're standing up for our values. You know, you can talk values, you actually have to do something about it at some point in time, and the values here are freedom of navigation, international trade, international rule of law, and what we're doing is we're sending a small team, a team of 6 from New Zealand Defence Force, to work alongside coalition partners who have similar like-minded values to say this is important, that actually we make sure those shipping lanes, those international shipping lanes are free and easy to navigate. Sorry, Felix.
How many people have been killed? Have the Houthis killed or injured in those shipping attacks?
What is important is that the Houthis shouldn't be able to issue any attacks on shipping lanes across the Red Sea or through the Suez Canal. We have there's 15% of global trade that's been impacted and passed through that route. You think about what's happening actually in the Panama Canal, where there are drought conditions, and there's been, I think, a drop-off of traffic through there of about 40%. So this is a serious issue for the world, and it means that actually people from some countries are going to face starvation, they're going to have difficulties actually securing food, and a whole range of issues. So, we're standing up for values here, and that's what we're going to do in New Zealand. We talk about an independent foreign policy where we have a set of values that we believe in. We are a small trading nation at the end of the world. We rely on that trading route. We've joined with other countries, made statements and used our words, but we're now following it up and making sure we make a commitment that's real.
Are you concerned that the deployment will be seen internationally as though we have to side with Israel?
No. New Zealand has a long-standing commitment to ensure peace and support peace in the Middle East. If you think about it, we've been part of a combined maritime forces since 2013. We've had defence personnel that are part of that coalition right now and have been there since that period of time. And so this is a continuation of what we naturally have been doing, which is, we've had a long history, right back even into different programs around, right back into the 50s around New Zealand Defence Forces being in the Middle East. So, the reality is, we want to be part of a world where we actually stand up for values, and sometimes that means you put resources rather than just words to a task. And sorry,
Could we more easily be dragged?
No, our small team of 6, who've got it time limited to the 31st of July this year. We think that's all that's needed, and we'll obviously.
Has the deployment ever ended on the date that it was initially set?
Well, we're making an assessment. We've been, we see a problem. We think that we've got a capability and some support that we can offer to a coalition of countries that feel the same that we feel, and we're following through on delivering on our commitments. Sorry?
Are you giving a cast iron commitment that you will not go beyond that date and you will not go beyond that number of
Well, we've bounded this around the 31st of July as the latest by which we imagine that this mission will be finished.
Winston Peters.
But Houthi have been in that region for some periods of time. There's been periods of escalation. There's been periods where it's actually been security and peace has been achieved. And so we are going to make sure that we follow up and play our role and play our part in the world. You can't just stand up and say words, you actually have to follow it through with actions.
Winston Peters and
Again, we're not talking about the team composition or their location for security reasons.
Peters-
Sorry, let's
Prime
just
Minister,
Joe.
I was asked, isn't it exhausting for you and for Tama Potaka to come to Hui like last Saturday, like today, and basically defend a policy that David Seymour is the architect of when he doesn't even bother to frontier himself and take that criticism?
Well, again, we're part of a coalition government. We've made a commitment that we will support a first reading of an Act bill up until first reading, and no commitment beyond that. What we are doing here, well, I've left that as free will and free choice for those party leaders to determine whether they want to be here or not. But the point for me is I enjoy being here, and I don't mind the provocation, I don't mind the challenge. It's important to be able to hear those voices and that perspective. And what I can tell you is that actually I've come away with again building and deepening a relationship with people that I want to do business with and I want to partner with to get better outcomes for New Zealanders. And so for me, part of it is about building relationships, building trust, being able to have some pretty straight up conversations with each other about how we do that, and ultimately deliver better results for New Zealanders.
Do you think he is hiding from the debate that he insists he actually wants to hear?
Well, again, that's a question for him. I mean, the question for me is that I, as Prime Minister of New Zealand, as the leader of a coalition government, I'm coming to Rātana for the second time in a row because I enjoy the interaction. I get something from it, I learn something from it, I get to be able to meet with people who might have a different perspective from myself but are deeply committed to the future of this country. And we don't all have to agree, we don't all have to have the same answer, we don't have to sound the same, we don't have to speak the same. In fact, if we do that, we've got a different set of problems. But what we have to be able to do is focus on going forward as a country. And I can tell you, our country needs a turnaround because we are not in a good place. And so we're going to work hard to make sure we get those results.
Prime Minister next year, he'll be acting Prime Minister on occasions where you're out of the country. Is it about time that he does sort of stand up and come to these events where he might?
Well, again, those are questions for him. But what I'd say to you, I'm pleased to be here. I've really enjoyed it. It's been another great session. I've enjoyed continuing to deepen my relationships with Māori leaders up and down the country. I've probably met with Kingi Tuheitia now probably 6 or 7 times. It was great to meet with other leaders across the piece as well. So, and I'll continue to do so. I believe, that we build relationships, we establish trust, we talk about things that may be uncomfortable, things that we can work together on, things that we are challenged by, and then we go forward with plans and results to get better outcomes.
The government has till
Sorry,
the end of January. The
hang
government
on,
has-
hang on 1 moment.
What did you discuss with the leaders of Rātana after the call?
Again, a lot of what our conversation had been before the hui, the Kingitanga hui. I'd gone and met with King Tuheitia beforehand. We talked, and I wanted to follow. I'd said to him I would like to hear from him about how that hui had gone on Saturday, and what were the key themes. A lot of the themes are also how does Māori do well? How does Māori go forward? How does Māori want? What are the outcomes Māori want by 2040? Those are conversations that we're very energised in and very focused on as well. And so again, we carried on our conversation talking about the things that we can do to improve outcomes for Māori, and that's. I know it sounds repetitive, but those are the conversations we're getting into. We talked about the fact that 2/3 of our kids aren't in school. The Māori kids aren't in school at the moment. So what are we going to do literally tomorrow to make sure that that comes to life? Because it's all very well having all these other conversations, but if we can't get our kids educated, they don't set them up for great futures, we don't set the country up well.
Minister Peters and
hang on.
Minister Peters and Minister Jones were both booed during their speeches, something that apparently is the first time that's happened for them. Sure, as far as outcomes goes, that's probably not the best reception.
Well, you've got to engage, don't you? I mean, what's the choice?
Is that good engagement?
Well, I think it is. I think it is. It's right that you come here and you actually front up and you take the criticism, you hear the views, people have different perspectives. That's okay in this country. We're allowed to have different views from each other.
Can you answer that as well? Because that pai is Tūmatauinga, and that's exactly the place where Shane should talk, his kōrero, and the place where there should be a response. So it's actually not a surprise to us to Te Ao Māori, is it? I mean, that's exactly the place to do it.
Well, the Aotea is a place for very serious, candid and honest conversations, and we saw that today.
Can I just ask both of you, how did you
Sorry.
feel?
Sorry?
Just on the New Zealand Act First aspect. I mean, you want to be a uniting Prime Minister, and this debate has the potential to be fractious, and there's arguments, and there's And it felt like the New Zealand First leaders were very provocative and were very hostile and were booed today. Does that concern you?
Well, I can tell you the conversations that we have behind closed doors are actually whether with New Zealand First or National or any of the us there with the political with the Maori leaders, as I saw today, was very constructive, very positive. I can tell you Shane Jones wants to improve outcomes for Maori, big time. Big time. That's what's uniting us. And so he's in that conversation with the Māori King and others, actually thinking about how we take that forward. So, we've had a very positive, interactions. I have to say that has been my experience of the last 18 months. I appreciate there's, the Treaty Principles Bill is a topic of conversation everyone wants to talk about, but there's actually a lot more going on in Māoridom and a lot of other issues that people are focused on.
When are you going to set those KPIs, particularly for Māori?
Well, we've been in power for 8 weeks. Previous government was there for 6 years, and it wasn't crystal clear. So don't worry, it's coming. But we are working incredibly hard through our 100-day plan. We're then rolling through into 12 quarterly plans, which we're working up right now, and we'll continue to just march our way through it.
You keep saying you had a positive experience, but
Yep.
the facts are you were labelled the enemy of Māori and
By who?
three-headed taniwha.
By Labour.
No, not just by Labour,
Yep.
by a number of the speakers. So, how can you describe being labelled the enemy of Māori and the three-headed taniwha of government as a positive experience?
Because I have a number of conversations about broader set of issues that actually I found very stimulating and actually gave us a good basis for continuing to work together to find ways forward, to take the country forward.
Being called a three-headed taniwha the enemy of Māori?
No, what I'm focused on is making sure that I have good conversation with Māori leaders, which I have been doing over the last year or so, behind closed doors, and then we get into the issues about actually how are we going to improve health outcomes, education outcomes, crime, how are we going to actually make sure we've got the infrastructure we need to take this country forward. Those are the places where we have massive alignment and we have good conversations. Sorry, Felix. Yeah, Felix, sorry. Yep, sure. Felix?
Domestic inflation remains high despite a general fall. What are you going to do to bring down housing and insurance costs?
Well, we've got a program of reform to the Resource Management Act, which in part is about making it easier to build houses in this country. Even in our meeting with Ngāi Tahu last week, they said, look, we've got land, but there are so many rules in the way that make it hard to build houses. So we want to cut through a lot of that red tape, because when we have more houses, we'll have more competitive rents too.
And will you increase the minimum wage this year to support those feeling the pinch due to inflation?
Yes, but Cabinet is yet to discuss at what level.
What I'd just say to you is that inflation at a 2-year low, in terms of the way it's trending down, is a very positive thing. We're working incredibly hard to make sure that we actually get the Reserve Bank focused on fighting inflation. We want to get government spending under control that's been fueling inflation, and we need to make sure that we reduce the red tape and regulation that's adding cost to businesses that leads to higher prices. And so what we've got to do, we said we're doing, we're focusing on fighting inflation, lowering the cost of living. When we do that, we lower interest rates, making housing more affordable for everybody, getting the economy growing in the right way. So it's an encouraging sign. There's a lot more for us to do.
So are you seeing it as a win for the government already? 8 weeks in power and inflation's coming?
Well, you've seen us be very focused at 100 days on actions to take to lower the cost of living and to lower inflation. If we can do that, we get interest rates down, we get businesses investing, we keep people in jobs. That's a good thing for our economy.
I think it's not so much a matter of credit, it's a matter of acknowledging this is a good result for New Zealanders.
And this is where we
because actually we need that inflation number coming down, we need it under 3%, and we're doing everything we can to support the Reserve Bank in that mission.
Okay, team.